All right, welcome back, everyone, to another enlightening episode of the All Me podcast. I'm super excited to introduce you to my buddy Brad Ring. He's actually our very first professional soccer player to join us on the podcast. So, Brad, thanks so much for joining us, man.
Yeah, of course. I'm excited. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, this will be really cool because again, as a first soccer player, right? We've had baseball players and various other athletes on the podcast. It'll be interesting to sort of talk about your journey and how you went from youth sport into playing professional sports and then to the great work that you're doing today with OnRise. So just focusing on soccer and being an athlete as a young kid, can you kind of talk about what it was like growing up? I mean, did you play soccer? Did you play multiple sports growing up, or was
Yeah.
it something you kind of picked up in middle school and high school?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. Look, I was that kid playing all sorts of sports. So I was playing soccer, basketball, baseball,
Yeah.
flag football. I played 1 year of tackle football in middle school, golf just for fun. But I was super active. I love sports. Really, I just love competing, to be quite honest with you. So yeah, I was that rambunctious, energetic kid running around. My parents always trying to figure out what the heck to do with me as I was always running, bouncing off the walls. So yeah, sports was a passion from the get-go. I had some success in soccer, and that I think led to even kind of fueling that passion to a degree. And then was fortunate to do some cool things, even as a youth player. That was fairly unique, and that kind of led to taking it even more serious come like those high school ages.
Okay, so it's interesting, I guess, especially parents with young kids like myself that are tuned in listening today. Those kids that are bouncing off the wall, you might have your next professional athlete run around your house. You just got to find a way to sort of hone those skills and hone all that energy.
Yeah, exactly. Look, my mom, I remember her taking me from like flag football practice straight to soccer practice. And then in the winter, it was, indoor soccer, which was a lighter schedule compared to spring and fall, straight to basketball practice. So I was on the go. I was keeping busy. I was keeping my parents busy. I was one of four kids. So they were doing all sorts of running around. My grandparents lived there locally where I grew up in Rockford, Illinois. So luckily they could lean on my grandparents a bit to, kind of get me from point A to point B. But I mean, I look back at those years as like so much fun, as I got older and it got more serious and it turned a little bit more businessy.
Yeah.
Now I look back at those years as just foundational pieces for me in sports, but also just as a person. And I think that really helped mold me, into the person I am today. So
Yeah, and what's interesting, having been around, through what we do here at the Taylor Hooton Foundation, having been around, plenty of professional athletes, it's always interesting because oftentimes, especially, at the level that you made it to, you can tell pretty early on, guys and gals that are going to become professional athletes. At what point did you realize, like in your career, was it middle school or high school, maybe even college, that you were just a little bit different, a little bit more special than most of the other, your teammates or even
yeah.
competitors that, okay, now I might have a chance. I think I can, take this from high school to college. And now that I'm here in college, now I can take this to the next level.
Yeah. It's such a good question, and I might have a long-winded response with
Yeah.
it. I knew I was somewhat special in some ways because as a youth athlete, I was kind of on these regional teams and
Yeah.
sometimes national teams. So I was pretty fortunate to be able to, represent Illinois and represent the Midwest, playing against other regions of the country at a fairly young age, even traveling internationally to Brazil and Costa
That's
Rica
cool.
and England and Portugal and Italy and some of these other really cool places. So I got to experience a lot of unique things just because of the kind of program that I was involved in, which is called ODP, the Olympic Development Program, which still exists a little different today. But so I knew I had some capabilities. Now I had the goal of being a professional when I was like in second grade, writing in my journal, right? Like, what do you want
That's
to be when
cool.
you grow up? Like my mom showed me that. Like I have that somewhere in my basement to this
That's
day.
so
So like there
cool.
was always that goal, but the reality of it was like one step at a time. So getting into high school, like my freshman year, I was like, I really want to make varsity. I should make varsity. I really want to make it. I ended up getting all conference my freshman year. So cool. I like overshot that goal. Right. And then it was, hey, I want to play college soccer. So I put a lot of time into putting myself in a good position to play college soccer. Ended up going to Indiana University, who was coming off of back-to-back national championships.
Oh,
So
wow.
I went to like the best program in the country. And then really just that same process over again, right? It was like, hey, I need to get some playing time, and then I need to become a starter, and then I want to become all Big 10, then I want to become all American, and started checking those off, kind of one by one. And it was really probably sophomore year, Don, where the reality set in of like, shoot, I'm actually on a trajectory, right, to have a chance
Yeah.
to go pro. So it was all kind of one step at a time. There was the big goal like at the end that I was striving towards, but that wasn't like a daily thought. It was, how do I accomplish a bunch of these small goals that will get me to, kind of where I want to go in the end.
Were you heavily recruited, like, in high school by a bunch of different schools for you to, "Yeah, hey, we want you to come to our university and play here"?
Yeah, once again, pretty fortunate just due to, kind of the stuff I was doing as a youth. I was, yeah, pretty heavily recruited. I think I could have gone to most, if not all schools, maybe outside of Ivy League. I did good in school, but not that good, so I had a lot of opportunity, when IU kind of came knocking. It was a pretty easy sell from their vantage point. They're essentially, hey, we won back-to-back national titles. Do you want to be
Yeah.
part of this? And given the fact that I knew that would set me up best for having a chance to become a pro, because they would send a couple guys pro every year, essentially.
Mhm.
Um, I knew I'd be in a position at that point.
So talk about being a freshman, right? I mean, you're coming up. I know, and I played Division I baseball, and again, working with a lot of guys in baseball, it's sort of like
Yeah.
there's some guys. It takes some, freshman, sophomore, even junior year to develop to even be
Yep.
considered, in the Major League Baseball draft. But when you're a freshman, do you start? I mean, kind of talk about what that's like, especially coming off two national championships, right? It's like
Yeah.
there's a lot of pressure, I'm sure, as a freshman, things that you had to go through. Like, okay, I'm now competing at this next level. I know it's a big step up from high school. Can you kind of talk about what that transition was like, especially from, the whole mental health aspect of it?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a tough one, right? Because you're leaving senior year where you're essentially playing against only people your age or younger
Mhm.
at that point, right? And then you become a freshman and you're only playing against people your age or 3, 4, or 5 years older, right? So it's a massive jump, to state the obvious. The biggest thing for me was the speed of play was just much quicker.
Uh-huh.
Everyone was big, fast, and strong, right? It wasn't
Mhm.
just, hey, there's a handful of people on the field that are big, fast, and strong.
All over.
And then 2 was like the fitness aspect of it. Maybe that's a little specific to soccer, but I always thought I was a hard worker and covered a lot of ground in youth sports, right? And in high school. And then I saw what it took at the elite collegiate level. And that opened my eyes, right? Like I thought I was fit until I got on
Yeah.
campus and we have 2-a-days and fitness tests and, 2 miles in 12 minutes and the beep test and all of these things. And I'm kind of looking around. I'm like, man, I'm not where I need to be,
Mhm.
So it took me a good 3, 4 weeks to honestly get my legs under me. Like I was
Yeah.
jello legs for that first month. And I remember my coach coming over to me about 3, 4 weeks in. He's like, your legs are starting to feel a little bit better, aren't they? I was
Right.
like, yeah, I finally like rounded the corner, and that showed in my playing time. So I was not um, a starter out of the gates. I had a good preseason my freshman year, got subbed into some games, and then it was really kind of a month in where I, started to get some starts and heavy playing time where I was subbed in, and then I'd play the rest of the game. Had a good freshman year, made like all freshman team and stuff like that, but knew, hey, this is a good kind of foundational piece for me, kind of building my soccer career at IU. Um, but also, and then getting to the second part of your question, like the mental side of things,
Yeah.
I was fortunate. I always had a good support group, my parents and friends and family and so forth, and a lot of my teammates and so forth, you know, were fortunate as well, but also had some others, who maybe didn't have that support group around them.
Mhm.
And it can be difficult. I had tons of teammates over the years that I think would have benefited immensely from having some support.
Yeah.
Whether that was them just kind of struggling and kind of losing their way, or people who really struggled.
Yeah.
And so having those support systems around, I think is crucial, especially as you're facing new challenges you've never faced before. Uh, right. And that's where you can really get some benefit from speaking to someone who's been in your shoes, right? Who's been the new kid on campus,
Yeah.
who's trying to make the team, who's trying to get fit, who's trying to fit in. Later then for me it was, hey, how do I actually lead as a younger player, right? I
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
in a leadership position come my sophomore year, and I remember having a conversation with my coach where it was like, I told him, I was like, I feel like I can't tell other people what to do because they're 2, 3 years older than me. And he was like, look, I'm putting you in this spot because I need you to do that. Right. So then it
Mhm.
was, okay, I got to shift a little bit. I got to go from being the workhorse to being the workhorse and the vocal leader.
Yeah.
And that was a learning experience for me as well, as some more pressure was kind of put on my shoulders.
Yeah, especially as like a 19, 20-year-old. It's awfully young, right? So I mean, people struggle with that even, leaders always stand out typically, right? But I can imagine just being a young man and I mean, again, you're at a school where they've demonstrated success at the top level and now it's yeah, I mean, you got guys a couple of years older that, 21, 22 years old and you've got to take that role. So I know that's a lot as a young person, but I want to kind of talk about as you're going through college, how does soccer differ than, let's say, the NBA, the NFL, Major League Baseball? At what age are you eligible for a draft? How does that work? I mean, do you have obviously scouts coming to the game? Are there
Yeah.
multiple teams there talking with you, recruiting you, kind of like college? And again, how does it differ from the college recruiting process?
Yeah, good question. I think it's certainly different than some of those bigger kind of, maybe marquee leagues, but similar in a lot of ways. So there's a draft. So after my junior year, agents kind of started to reach out to me either directly or through my coaching staff. I forget. But there was some interest of me kind of leaving school a year early and entering the
Okay.
MLS draft. I ultimately decided to stay in school, took a bunch of summer credits between junior senior year so I could graduate a semester early and then enter the draft the following
Okay.
year, which is what I did. But nonetheless, I think agents play a pretty big role in that in terms of trying to figure out kind of where you're valued, where you might get drafted and how that looks and how that impacts the financial side of things and kind
Mm,
of weighing those options of, okay, if I leave this year, I could, maybe go a little higher, maybe make a little bit more, but then school's not covered and I don't have my degree, and very different than MLB, NBA, NFL, right? With the massive paychecks out of the gate, the MLS has grown, but it's not there, right?
mm.
So there's not that massive financial carrot, kind of waiting for you. So making sure to have my degree was important, certainly for myself as well as my parents. So that was a priority for me. And then I entered the draft after my senior year.
Okay.
Yeah, had some challenges, battling injuries and so forth. So my pro career ended up being delayed a year, but that's kind of how my experience was kind of through that draft process. I was drafted 17th overall to the San Jose Earthquakes.
Okay.
I spent a couple years out in California.
Yeah, it's kind of a big change from Illinois, right?
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to think, one of the things that you said that I hope everybody kind of picked up was just the importance that you put on also having a career, right? So where, some of the other larger sporting leagues, right, like the NFL, the NBA, I mean, you're going to get a sometimes life-changing money, right?
Yeah.
Right out of college where you felt it was important. Hey, I'm going to put in the extra work where some people say, hey, I could relax all summer, work out, hone my skills. To you, it was obviously important to get your education. And I think a lot of people miss that because sports aren't promised. Nothing's promised tomorrow, but especially in sports. I mean, you can get
Yeah.
injured. I mean, there's a number of things that can happen where that's taken away. And now it's like, well, do I go back to school? How does this work? So I can kind of finish all the hard work I put in, which was really neat. So kind of take us through. You're now, graduating college. You're being recruited, to go out and play in San Jose. What's it like when you hear your name called that you're picked 17th overall to go play Major League Soccer?
Yeah, it was one of those things for me where I didn't know if I should go in person or not because I didn't know if I was going to be like a top 10 or if I was going to fall second, third round. So nothing
Yeah.
was guaranteed. I ended up not going. I kind of wish I did go, but hindsight's 2020, I
Right.
suppose. So I get drafted. My agent calls me, hey, you're selected by San Jose. To be quite honest, I had to like Google like where exactly is San Jose. I just knew California. Like, I was
Yeah.
a Midwest kid. I hadn't been out to California too much. I was trying to figure out where exactly I was going. And then another thing that is similar in some leagues is like, even though they drafted you, you don't have a contract in place. Like, you still have to make the team. So there's no guaranteed money. They essentially
Oh.
just drafted for your rights. So it essentially equates to like an invite to preseason. Now, there can be pre-draft contracts and some other stuff on like, top 5, 10 picks. And maybe it's changed in the last 15
Mhm.
years, but I didn't have anything guaranteed. So kind of getting back to making sure I had
Wow.
my degree and something to fall back on, that was really important for me for a lot of reasons. Even fast forward the first couple of years of my career, I was on, as most people were at the time, semi-guaranteed contracts. So if at any point up until July 1, you got cut, you got paid, I think maybe a month extra, and then like it's done. Your contract wasn't guaranteed for the year. My first 3 years were like that. I was always that person, like, along with a lot of my teammates, where it's like in June, you're like, oh my gosh, I better be playing good in June because July
Yeah.
1's the cut line and I need to make it to July 1. That'll guarantee me the rest of the year. Uh, so there's a lot of pressure in a lot of ways. I had a lot of teammates that didn't get their degree, some that were like 3, 6, 10 credits away from a degree that didn't get it just because of the timing of it all, because the draft is in the winter,
Mhm.
right? So you essentially have to be on a 3.5 year track or a 4.5 year track if you redshirt or something like that. But that typical kind of 4 year track will leave you a semester short credit wise.
Interesting. Okay.
So yeah, it ended up being something that was valuable to me, making sure that I had something in the back. Because once again, and a lot of this is public knowledge. Like, my first year contract was 40,000 in San
Mhm.
Jose, California, in Silicon Valley. So that's like below poverty line,
Yeah,
essentially
you're
out
not the
there, right?
yeah.
Like, granted, this was 2010, so it's
Yeah.
some ago, but nonetheless, a lot's changed, in terms of the MLS and the minimums and even the
Yeah.
contract structures and so forth. So that wasn't everyone's experience, certainly not people's experience over the last handful of years, but that was mine back in that time.
Yeah, it's almost like you need $40,000 a month, right? It's obviously over exaggerated, but that would be super nice. So I always love hearing, especially from professional athletes, like they always tell you the moment you get your start or the first time you get out on that field and you're kind of looking around, you're like, wow, just take it all in. Kind of talk with us about what that was like.
Yeah, so funny. So I remember mine very well. It was an away game down in LA. We were playing Chivas, which isn't in the MLS anymore. Kind of fan base moved to like LAFC when they got a team in some ways. And yeah, I got subbed in. We were losing, I think 2-1 at the time. Got subbed in like the 70th minute or so. So I knew I had like a good 20 minutes to give. And first ball that's passed to me goes right under my foot. Like, I just a little anxious, probably a little
Yeah.
excited, a little nervous. I'm scanning, I'm looking too much. I'm not focusing on the actual, touch that's coming in. We ended up losing the game, which we were losing when I went in, so it didn't necessarily look bad on me. But that was my first, appearance. And then that rookie year, I got a handful of starts, maybe 4 or 5 starts, and then like 15, 16 appearances. So for me, in my head, that was a pretty good, kind of rookie year, gaining some experience, gaining some trust with my teammates and trust with my coaching staff and so forth. And then had a better second year there in the MLS. But it was, it was, for me, once again, it was kind of not ups and downs, but
Yeah.
like, I was rarely like the go-to guy in the MLS. I was always fighting for time, fighting for
Mhm.
starts, and I got some. I had a good run one of my years, maybe I think it was my second year where I had like 15, 16 starts. But it's a battle. Like, nothing's handed to you.
Yeah.
There's 25, 28 guys battling for playing time, and they're all good. And
Yeah. The best of
some
the
of
best.
them are much older. Some of them are much more experienced. Some of them are more athletic. Some of them are more technical. I was able to contribute and dress for a lot of games and get subbed in because I did have some versatility to me where I could play a couple different roles. So I think that helped me as well. But yeah, I wouldn't say rocky, but it wasn't easy for me. That's for sure.
That's interesting. So, because one of the things, you're talking about just having a fight for your time and nothing's obviously given to you. And I want to kind of bring this back to the mental health aspect of it is you also have to be mentally strong. And I think a lot of young people, when they see professional sports, they're tuning in on TV or now, obviously streaming from their phone or what have you,
Yeah.
and they see sort of the final product, the dance, for lack of a better words, right? So
Yeah.
you see all that happen. You don't see all of the prep time that goes into it, the blood, sweat, the tears, all of that stuff. I mean, how as a professional athlete do you try to handle that aspect? Because I'm sure there's anxiety. You get the butterflies before every game. And while some athletes are great at handling that, others are not. So can you kind of talk about as an athlete? I mean, you also have physically you've got to be ready, but mentally as well, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I think overall, I think the sports world has come a long way in the last 15, 20 years in that regard. You look at a lot of programs collegiately, professionally, have their own sports psychologists and so forth that are on staff full time. I didn't have that at that
Yeah.
time. I think some of that would have benefited me for sure. Certainly the performance side of things, or talking to people that have been in my shoes and really experienced the things that I was going through, that
Mhm.
relatability would have been really nice. But yeah, it's everything, right?
Yeah.
It's eating right, it's sleeping right, it's recovery. Well, that's something that was a little eye opening to me in the pro space as well, compared to college, where in college you might play a game and at times you might have a beer or two after, right? And then in pro, it's like, yeah, you could, but you got a game in 3 more days, and that game's in Denver, so you got to flight out.
Yeah.
So, are you getting massages? Are you doing recovery boots? Are you hydrating? Are you doing cryo? Are you doing sauna? Like, there's just so many options to improve yourself physically, and a lot of that is connected to you mentally as well, right? Like,
Yeah.
if you're feeling better physically, you're going to be in a better chance to feel better mentally, and then kind of keeping that kind of mental capacity and focus and so forth. Someone that I always think about when I think about that is Jalen Hurts. I'm not an Eagles fan at all.
Mhm.
I'm a Bears fan and kind of like adopted Colts fans, having lived in Indy. But like, I feel like he has elite mental game.
Mhm.
Like how he holds himself, how he leads that team, how he shows up in interviews, how he answers difficult questions from the press. Like, he is just an elite leader, and I feel like his mental game is one of the strongest I've seen, and that can go a long way, and for his own ability, but then also kind of leading the team.
Yeah, and that's one of the things a lot of people don't think about. You could have all the God-given talent in the world and be the absolute best athlete, but if you're not right, between the ears, you can really it will cause a struggle out on the field. And what I find interesting, Brad, and you've seen this, you've got experience from, playing sports, middle school, all the way up to college, and even just being a student in general, and now as an adult. But, mental health years ago was not treated like it is today. We've come a long way. We're doing a lot of great things. You have team
Yeah,
psychiatrists, and now and even in all the professional sports, as the athletes and ownership and management of these teams and clubs, are really pushing for mental health resources. Where growing up in high school and college, being an athlete myself, or even as a student, just a normal person, if there were mental health struggles, you're typically on your own to kind of figure
yeah,
that out. And that's, as you know, in your profession, and I do want to get to that, but I want to talk to you as like a person first. I mean, these are things that you just it's hard to solve on your own. So
yeah.
have you sort of seen a progression from when you were younger to today as far as, mental health resources and how we're dealing with mental health issues?
Yeah, massively. I mean, to be
Yeah.
honest, I went to a big school, Big Ten school, IU, right? And like in 2005 to 8, when I was there, it wasn't really talked about at all. Now programs have. I just talked to one of my colleagues. He mentioned a school out in Arizona that he thinks has 12 sports psychologists on staff, right? So like, there are massive focuses and priority put to supporting coach and athlete mental health, and which is amazing to see. And a lot
Yeah.
of it is because it's what's best for the individual. It's
Yeah.
also going to be what's best for the individual's performance, which is what's best for the program's performance and outcomes. And so it's a win all the way around
Yeah.
when you think about supporting an individual's mental health, because that ripple effect is going to have so much positive impact, kind of down the line. Um, and now, the cool thing is that people are talking about it more, and there's different resources available. I think years ago it was, hey, we prioritize it. Okay, we're going to go hire someone, full-time employee. And that's still an option, and that should be still an option, right? But I think also the cool thing is, hey, there's some other ways to crack this nut as well, right? We can layer on some different levels of care. We can do some things virtually to kind of supplement what's going on, kind of in person, counseling center and therapists and sports psychologists and so forth. So that evolution over the last, 5 or so years has been really fun to watch. I think coming out of COVID was a big game changer,
Yes.
Don, right? It was
Yep.
for two main reasons. One, COVID was hard, right?
Yeah.
Like COVID
Yeah.
stunk, and it was difficult, and people came out of it. A lot of people feeling isolated, not having a
Mhm.
sense of community, not having someone to talk to, and they needed help, and that shows in all of the data that you've seen, all the NCAA studies that were done kind of coming out of COVID, but that also led to some innovation, which led to OnRise and kind of what we're doing, supporting student athletes and pro
Yep.
athletes and so forth. So it's cool, right? Sometimes problem leads to new solutions. And
Yep.
and now I think we're in a better spot now for sure. And are we done? No. Have we
No.
accomplished everything we want to accomplish?
No.
Absolutely not. But like we're trending in the right direction, which is inspiring to see.
Yeah, I love seeing all of the extra help that's available. Not just in sport. In sport, they're doing a tremendous job. I mean, putting together staffs and resources for the athletes, but also with us general folks,
Yeah.
that are out there. You now have lines where you can text in. Maybe you're not comfortable calling somebody, or you're really busy, and it'd just be easier to text, which is great. And that, like, really, you've alluded to it already, but that leads you to your career path with what you're doing now. And that's kind of how our paths cross, because what we've been realizing, Brad, whether it's parents reaching out or young people, obviously I lost my younger brother to suicide, dealing, stemming from a mental health issue, depression that was brought on by, his abuse of anabolic steroids. So people, when we do our programs or we talk about mental health, they were asking us for resources. Well, one of the things you quickly learn in business and life is to stay in your lane, right? To do things that you're good at, and outsource resources that other people are experts and that are doing a great job in. And when we wanted to put some information on our website about how young people or parents, even athletes that we're talking to, can find resources for mental health, you and I set up a Zoom call. We had a great
Yeah.
conversation, and I want to talk about, what led you to working with OnRise? What is OnRise? What do you do there? Sort of what resources do you provide?
Yeah, no, yeah, I'm glad we were able to meet and kind of connect the two sides. And I was connected. I'll back up 1 second. I helped co-found the USL Players Association, so I helped unionize second division soccer.
Okay.
I still serve as the grievance committee member and advisory board member. And I share that because I'm very close with the executive director at the USLPA, Connor Tobin, who's a great friend, great guy, doing amazing things, supporting that group, leading that group. He connected me to Kim Quigley, who was OnRise CEO. They had, a couple customers, and were really looking to kind of grow their presence in sports. And it was a perfect match and perfect fit for me. I had been in nonprofit tech for 5 years, really enjoyed that, but was kind of ready for that next step. And this was a good opportunity for me to get back into sports and into something I'm passionate about. So that's what led that connection to Kim Quigley at OnRise. And what we're doing is really trying to innovate the athlete mental health space, right? And a lot of I think when you and I were probably growing up, if we were struggling, or a friend or family was struggling, your really only option was to tell your parents, to
Correct.
hopefully use insurance. Hope you're probably going to wait a couple weeks. Then you're probably going
Correct.
to talk to someone who doesn't quite understand sports. And
Correct.
by the way, they're probably only available 9 to 5, and you have school and practice, and there's just a lot of barriers around that, right? So what we're trying to do is really remove as many barriers as we can, provide a ton of flexibility in terms of scheduling, a ton of diversity, a ton of relatability by hiring former college and pro athletes to help support today's athletes. That drives trust, drives engagement, but still also having that clinical oversight from therapists and psychiatrists, as well as 24/7 access and so forth. So we've been fortunate to really kind of grow our impact here at OnRise. We work with a ton of professional leagues like the PLL and PWHL and League One Volleyball and Athletes Unlimited and a number of others, individual clubs as well. So like an Inter Miami, Philadelphia Union, Nashville SC, players associations, the USL, MLS, US Women's National Team, PFA Canada, to name a few, right? So a wide range of groups as well as the college space as well. And some of those relationships we're like the go-to sole resource on. And sometimes we're just supplementing what they have in place. And that
Okay.
it really is applicable specifically in college, right? They have a counseling center, right? They have some resources, but we know about half of student athletes aren't going to use the internal
Yeah.
resources because of the stigma around it and so
Yep.
forth. Whether that's real or not, that's what's in the
I
mind of
think
an
that's really,
18,
yeah.
19-year-old,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So it's real to them. So yeah, we can kind of supplement what they have going on and be just a more cheaper but more impactful option to have in place.
So you're offering counseling services. I mean, are these done virtually, in person, both? I mean, sort of talk about like if I'm an athlete at a school, right, and or a professional athlete that you guys are working with, what sort of resources would be available to me? So I feel like I'm stuck.
Yep.
I'm dealing with some anxiety, maybe some depression, having issues sleeping. There's a lot going on in life. I'm trying to compete at the top level, but I also have family things going on.
Yeah.
How, like, what would I be looking for when I come to OnRise? Like, what sort of resources would I be able to access outside of what I have with my own club?
Yeah. I mean, so all of those things you mentioned are great reasons. And it can also be a lot less than that. It can
Okay.
just be like, I'm feeling a little blah, like I
Okay.
don't have anyone to talk to. I need a little bit of guidance, maybe even like a little mentorship. So it can be anything from I just need to talk to someone to I'm depressed or
Okay.
I'm on antidepressant medication, right?
Okay.
So it's a wide gamut in terms of how we can help. Another, kind of point to bring up is people can come to us and say, this is exactly what I'm struggling with and I need this. Great. We can help get you connected with the best level of care. But they can also come to us just open slate and have a conversation, and then we can get them directed and connected to the best level of care. Right.
Okay.
So it's pretty flexible. Couple of the other, kind of benefits in terms of our approach is that athlete to athlete support.
Love
Right.
that.
So picture yourself as 18, 20-year-old, right? Like you would have been more likely to speak with someone who is a former baseball player, who's played
100%.
collegiate baseball, who's been in your shoes, who understands trying to battle for playing time, who's overcome injuries, right? It's just a more
100%.
relatable experience. And we've seen that in our numbers and in our data where people will come in, engage sooner with that level of care, and then the good thing is you're not stuck to that level of care. We still have other levels, right?
Mm.
So as soon as let's say you're using OnRise, Don, and you mention any number of things that should suggest you need to see licensed level of care, no problem. We escalate that up. You're seen by a therapist, and then you come back down. You still have your former athlete as kind of your main point of contact.
Okay.
So it's a newer approach. You can kind of think of it a little bit like a trainer to a doctor,
Okay.
right?
Yep. Yep.
Like if you got a tight quad, you don't need a doctor,
Yep.
right? You need a trainer's fine, right? Trainer can handle everything that you need. That's their job. That's great. Same thing. If you're struggling a little bit mentally, doesn't mean you need a psychiatrist,
Yep.
right? You just need someone that understands what you're going through, can help guide you, can give you some lessons. Now, if you need the psychiatrist, they're
Yep.
there, right? But you don't always need to jump up all of those levels for a lot of different reasons. So, yeah, hopefully that helps.
Yeah. No, that's a great analogy.
kind of walk through that a little bit, but it's been awesome. We've grown significantly, and when we talk about growing, we talk about impact.
Yep.
We always say impact over everything. How many people are we meeting where they're at? How many sessions are we having? How many hours of help are we providing? Those are really the metrics that drive and fuel us.
What about, let's just say you're talking to just a general high school parent, right? So they're at a very small school, maybe rural school, if we want to get really detailed on this example, and their young person struggling. Now they know it, right? Are they able to reach out to OnRise? That being question number one. And number two, I'm a high school athlete in this rural town and I'm struggling and I don't want to talk to my parents or the school counselor. Is OnRise available for me?
Yeah, it's a great question. So that nut we're still trying to crack to a degree. Typically, we're a B2B type company
Okay.
because we know if the individual has to pay, they're less likely to do it. So
Yep.
our approach is, hey, let's work with the organization to provide care for the individuals. Now that said, we aren't in the business of turning people away that need help. So we try to
Yeah.
take people in and try to get them the help that they need
Yep.
for sure. But that we know they're much more likely if it's covered right already. So, but yeah, that's a good example though. So some of these like academies, high
Mhm.
schools, and colleges and so forth that we work with that are not even talking about the pro space. It's the individuals who, man, I don't quite want to knock on the door, either literally or virtual door of the in-house
Yep.
option, or I don't necessarily want to tell my team doc or tell my trainer or tell my parents. So most of the time that would mean and lead to inaction,
Okay.
right? Unless someone like us is there where they can say, hey, this is covered. I can use OnRise whenever I want. It's free to me. The organization's covering it. I have unlimited access. I have multiple levels of care, and I know it's not getting turned back and told to my coach right away because I got a big game coming up, and I don't want my playing time to be impacted by the fact that my coach might think I'm weak or whatever
Uh-huh.
the case
Uh-huh.
is for seeking some help. So that's
Yep.
really where we're filling those gaps and providing access to a lot of individuals who otherwise would have stayed quiet and struggled in silence.
Yeah, and kind of the thought process behind that question was, if I'm a parent out there, as parents, especially moms, they can be cheerleaders, they can be advocates, where if they're participating, let's say it's in a select soccer league, or
Yeah.
they can really lobby that league, like, hey, this is a great resource. We're spending a lot of money to be in this league. These kids need this sort of resource that maybe they don't have at school, so they could hopefully lobby that league to contact you guys to learn more about how their league can get involved.
100%. Yeah. Leagues, clubs, high schools,
Hmm.
colleges, for
Hmm.
sure. All of those. And look, transparently, that's why we're excited to partner with a group like you all, right?
Yeah.
Who's doing so much in terms of awareness and reducing that stigma around mental health and so forth, and knowing that there's people that are coming to you looking for some guidance, right? That's a bucket that we want to scoop up,
Yep.
right? We want to be there for those individuals because those are the exact individuals who need some help, who need access, who need care, who need someone to listen to. So yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more
Yeah,
in
and
terms
because
of
I,
us
I
having
I
this
think about
conversation.
myself as, like, going back to high school. Obviously I grew up in a different world than we live in today, but I don't necessarily think, me, and this is just personally, this is my opinion, I would want to go to the school counselor. I think I would feel more comfortable, having, if our school had access to somebody like OnRise, somebody that's third party, disinterested in the school and my schoolwork, but just solely focused on getting me healthy. Although I know, and we should know, we're told all the time, I mean, like, what's said between the counselors should stay between the counselors, but somebody sees you walking through school, hey, they're going to the counselor's office. Why is that? They're,
Yeah.
they're meeting with them regularly. Are they okay? And then the questions start, the rumors start. I just think it gives, especially from a student athlete perspective, it just gives sort of that layer of comfort, privacy, and I know who I'm talking to, and I can do it without being in the confines of my school.
100%. And we're actually massive advocates of having someone there, boots on the ground,
Yeah.
on campus, in the school. Like that's crucial. And
Yep.
we don't
100%.
view ourselves as a replacement. We view
Yep.
ourselves as a way to supplement,
Yep.
help engage people who maybe were a little reluctant,
Mhm.
help that counseling center when it's after hours, right? Like their
Yep.
mental health is important too. They can't be on the clock 24/7. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So, hey, how do we supplement
Yep.
that? We can help supplement by relating to your athletes, driving engagement, catching people that would fall through the cracks. work with your folks after hours, weekends, provide a crisis line while still working side by side with you, and even at times working towards consent to then loop them back in there on campus, right? It's not
Mhm.
something where someone comes to us and it's like, hey, they're ours. Like, we want to do what's best for the individual. And a lot of times that's involving the counseling center. Now, we're not going to break HIPAA
Yep.
to do that, but we can work towards that through conversation, right? Hey, Don, we've had 4 or 5 conversations. You might benefit from, looping in your counseling center, and we're not
Mhm.
going anywhere. We'll see you next week. No problem. Having someone there on campus might also be beneficial. Are you
Yep.
open to that? Right. And that's
Yep.
then a conversation that we can have to
Yep.
open those lines of communication. Now we are helping to holistically support this individual, right? Now
Mhm.
hey, I got someone to go to in person. I also got this great athlete specific group over here that I can use during different times, different hours, whenever I need it. Now this person's feeling they're feeling
Yep.
loved and supported and so forth. So it's been awesome. We recently onboarded a couple colleges. We've had dozens and dozens and dozens of people sign up in that first week,
That's awesome.
which is great, and some of them aren't even saying, hey, I'm struggling with this. Some of them are saying, hey, I want to make sure I'm set up and ready to
Yeah,
go
that's
when it's
awesome. Just
time.
like nutrition. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Look, we're trying to be so easy and relatable and accessible and all those things that it becomes a little bit more proactive, a little bit more preventative, right? Where we're not just getting people when they're really struggling, we're
Yeah.
getting people comfortable when they're just kind of nervous, kind of anxious, kind of looking for an edge,
Love it.
right? And if the earlier we can engage, the better, we can help support that individual.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's all part of the same thing, and it's really cool to see this growing. So, it's sort of the last thing I want to leave people with: putting on your OnRise hat, right, so to speak, and then taking your professional soccer cleats, right. So, being a professional athlete, which general message would be most important for you to share to not just parents out there, but young people that have aspirations of playing high school sports or playing college sports? And for some of those that are lucky enough, I mean, and we all dream, right, of playing professional sports. What's that message with sort of the experience that you have to share with them?
Yeah. Two things come to mind. I guess one would be to like have a dream, have a goal, but break it into smaller goals to work towards the larger goal. That's what I did. Worked well for me. I think a lot of people will say that's a good kind of template for goal setting and accomplishing those things. Know it's going to take time. Know it's going to take work. Know that it's not going to be a straight upwards trajectory, right? It's going to
Yeah.
look like this and it's going to swerve and it's going to sit for a second, maybe if you get injured, but just keep it trending in the right direction. So that would be one. And then two would be, even though you might have these goals and aspirations to accomplish certain things athletically, like you are more than just an athlete, right? Make sure to separate yourself as an athlete and yourself as an individual. That's so important.
Mhm.
If your complete identity is tied into you as an athlete, at some point that's going to stop, right? For me, it stopped when I was 31 and I retired from soccer. And luckily, I was in a good place and I transitioned, fairly well. But I had other friends and teammates who had a hard time because their identity and their self worth was tied to their athletic accomplishments. So just know that like you're good enough as an individual. You can do amazing things outside of sport whenever you move on, whether that's middle school, high school, college, pro, doesn't matter. You have worth in and of yourself.
Yeah, that's outstanding advice. Hopefully the leadership of OnRise is seeing this, because I mean they're extremely lucky to have somebody like you on board. And I don't want to take up too much of your time. Before we wrap up any podcast, any of the All Me podcast fans know that we don't let our guests leave without going through what we call our curveball round of questions. Now, these are going to be 3 questions that I ask you that likely have nothing to do with soccer, the great work that you're doing at OnRise. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the question. First thing that comes to mind is how you'll want to answer. You let me know when you're ready, and I'll throw you the first curveball.
I'm ready for it. Let's go.
All right. So the first one is: would you rather be invisible, or would you rather be able to read minds?
Oh wow. Read minds.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. I think that'd be kind of cool. All right. The second question is: aliens landed on Earth tomorrow and offered to take you home with them. Would you go?
Negative. No way.
I think I'm out too. I thought about that. I remember some movies growing up as a kid. I was, yeah.
I watched, Men in Black, and
Yeah.
that's not a world I want to live in.
All right. Well, cool. So, last question. This is kind of interesting. I don't know how quickly you'll be able to come up with this one, but what would be the title of your autobiography?
Oof. Wow.
That's why I saved this
Um,
one for last because this one's kind of I don't even know what mine would be, but
I had a nickname growing up based on my last name, Ring. So a lot of people called me Ringer. So maybe it
okay.
would be like The Ringer. And it doesn't tell the whole story, but it's catchy and it has a purpose and a meaning because it's my name. So I'll go with The Ringer.
Okay. Well, cool. Brad, man, thank you so much for joining us today and everything that you're doing at OnRise. This has been an incredible interview. I know people are going to really enjoy listening to it.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me on, Don. I had a blast and look forward to working with you all at the Taylor Hooton Foundation.